we'll start our meeting for November 7th, 2022. Roll call. All members of council are present except for Councilor Mike Janoski. He motivated his absence for this evening. We'll stand for the territorial land acknowledgement statement and moment of reflection, as well as the national anthem.
We acknowledge that we are on the unceded territory of the Anishinaabe and the traditional lands of the Haudenosaunee, Huron-Wendat, and Kenyan-Kahaka peoples. We acknowledge our shared obligation to respect, honor, and sustain these lands and the natural resources contained within.
Thank you, Councilor Barrett. Attendu que le Canada est fondé sur des principes qui reconnaissent la suprématie de Dieu et la primauté du droit, prenons un moment de réflexion personnelle. With that, item 4, additions, deletions, or amendments. We do have an addition under item 8, presentations from myself. Anything else from members of council? Councilor Associate?
I have a few.
Okay.
One was the Marionville Community Center.
Okay.
And then speed on Craig Street. And number 3, property on Craig at Forest Road.
Okay. So Marionville, item A, B, speed on Craig, and 106 Craig Street. Okay. Any others from members of council? So I'll need a mover and a seconder for a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Mr. Mayor, did you want to add something at number 20?
No.
No. Okay.
Moved by Councilor Lorrain, seconded by Councilor Brisson. All those in favor? Carried. Item 6, the exposure of pecuniary interest. Councilor Associate?
Yes, I have an indirect conflict with item 11F, Russell Rock's fundraiser for the food bank. My husband's one of the organizers.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Councilor Associate. We need to make sure if you haven't already, you'll have to fill in the form for that. Any others, members of council? Seeing none, okay, we'll move on. Item 7, adoption of minutes, regular council minutes of October 17, 2022. Motion to approve the following minutes as presented. And a mover and a seconder to put on the floor, please. Moved by Councilor Associate, seconded by Councilor Lorrain. Questions? Hearing seeing none. All those in favor? All those opposed? Carried. Next item is item 8, presentations from myself. So I think I will do this from the lectern over there. Might be a little bit easier. Je crois que les gens qui devaient rentrer. We'll just wait for a few guests to join us. Shouldn't take too long. We'll wait till a second. All right. We're a little bit ahead of schedule, so we'll just jump this item for now and we'll come back to it. OK. On va continuer. Item 9. Délégation, pétition, il n'y en a pas. Item 10, consent items. Motion that all items listed under consent items be received as presented. Item A, request for community grants from Parks and Recreation Department to 2022 budget. Item B, minutes of the Marionville Citizens Committee of May 31st, 2022. Item C, procès verbal du comité consultatif sur l'environnement du 17 août 2022. Item D, procès verbal du conseil d'administration de la bibliothèque publique du canton de Russell pour le 15 septembre 2022. Any questions or comments for these 4 items? Hearing, seeing none, I'll call motion that all items listed under consent items be received as presented. Moved and seconded. It's moved by Conseiller Brisson, seconded by Conseiller Lorrain. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Just
They're on their way.
they're on their way. Not a problem. Just make me a signal when everybody gets here. Thanks. We'll start off 11 reports from departments and council committees. Item A, zoning bylaw amendment report PD 72/2022, Eadie Road in Russell. The council received report PD 72/2022 dated November 7, 2022, and approved the zoning amendment application submitted by 502-6541 Ontario Inc., care of Melissa Cote, to amend the zoning from residential 1B withholding R1BH to residential 1B R1B, and from residential 1B exception 1 withholding R1B 1H to residential 1B exception 1 R1B 1, and from residential 3 withholding R3H to residential 3, and from residential 3 exception 55 withholding R355H to residential 3 exception 55 R355. Questions, comments, members of council? Anything to add from the administration? No? Good. We'll move on to item B. Item B. Entente de paiement en lieu du stationnement 1028 rue Notre-Dame, Embrun, rapport PD 74/2022. Que le Conseil reçoive le rapport PD 74/2022, daté du 7 novembre 2022, et que le Conseil approuve le règlement autorisant le maire et la greffière à exécuter et à apposer le sceau à une entente de paiement en lieu de stationnement entre le restaurant Latin Table et la corporation du canton de Russell pour la propriété décrite légalement comme étant une partie du lot 1 sur le plan H.O. Wood 1868, connu comme étant le 1028 rue Notre-Dame en bas. Questions, commentaires au nom du conseil? Councillor Associates.
Yeah, I just was curious about this one. So they're being charged for 2 parking spots. Is that my understanding for the Latin Table restaurant? I was just from the location, and being a small business, I was just concerned about that.
Yeah, Madame Tremblay.
So as mentioned in the report, the proposed development that they did was required 10 parking spaces and they're lacking 2. And we adopted the Cash-in-Lieu parking bylaw, I would say a few months ago, and that was something that would allow under the Planning Act to pay for those 2 missing parking spaces. So the amount that needs to be paid is determined based on an evaluation of the cost of those parking spot missing. And right now the cost is $1,500 per parking spot.
Yeah, no, I understand that, so it's gonna be a total of 3,000, but I was just like curious where they were supposed to come up with the parking spots, just because of their location being on the main drag there and other businesses being right next door. So that was my.
I think it's not to come up with the parking spots, it's based on the standards for the use of the area. They're supposed to have a certain amount based on those standards.
Yeah, so the ratio for a restaurant is, I don't remember by heart, but based on the proposal, they needed to have 10, and we acknowledge that they can't have room for 10. So that's why the option in those situations is to have a minor variance to allow them to have 8 instead of 10, or to pay cash-in-lieu. In this option, they prefer to have the cash-in-lieu instead of proceeding with a minor variance. So the option is to acknowledge that they can't come up with 10. But the ratio is still required under the zoning, so that's why they have those two options to recognize that they have 8 instead of 10.
Yeah, I'm just thinking, maybe we need to look at that in the future, especially if there's, another business right next door and it's just impossible for somebody to come up, and then that we have to charge them, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. D'autres questions, Conseiller Laurent?
Yeah, but this isn't the only place that has similar agreements in place when they're missing parking spaces. I mean, I'm sure that I know that there are others out there that have had the same issue, and they're renting spots in either our municipal parking lot, or they've had to pay in lieu as well. So it's not the first time this has occurred. So it's not something we're enforcing on somebody that nobody else has had to do ever, right?
Madame Carmine?
Yeah, so it's not the first time, and again, it's a permission that we have under the Planning Act, and like I mentioned, that's why those processes exist, in order for them to have a less minimum required as per the zoning bylaw. So they have the two options, the minor variance or the cash-in-lieu.
Yeah, and in this case, they just preferred going to cash-in-lieu.
Yeah, and usually the staff would recommend the preferred option, and in this case, we recognize that it's on the main street, and that's why we suggested that they proceed that way.
Okay, perfect, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, we'll move on to the next item. Item C, Delegation of Powers and Duties, Report PD 75-2022. The Council received Report PD 75-2022, dated November 7, 2022, and approved as recommended by the Planning Department to adopt by bylaw regarding the delegation of powers relating to undisputed consent applications from the Committee of Adjustment to the Director of Planning and Building and Economic Development. Questions, comments, members of council? Conseiller Brisson.
Wasn't that already voted before that it was going to be allowed, maybe 2 years ago? And is it because we had the lack of staff that it wasn't pursued? But I thought we had voted for that.
Je pense you might be referring to la chose qu'on voulait prendre des comptes des unis.
Oui, si vous me permettez, M. le maire. Donc, quelques années passées, on a donné l'autorité au comité de planning de revoir les demandes de détachement de terrain. So, avant, on amenait les demandes de détachement de terrain devant le conseil et devant le comité de planning. On a délégué l'autorité au comité de planning pour les demandes de détachement de terrain. Donc, on les amène plus devant le conseil. Le rapport présent, c'est simplement pour vous demander de donner l'autorité au directeur ou directrice. Dans le cas présent, étant donné que la municipalité, on n'est pas l'autorité approbatrice des demandes de détachement de terrain, c'est une façon d'éviter le red tape et d'accélérer les demandes de détachement de terrain. On est très régi au niveau de la province, donc c'est pas quelque chose qu'on a vraiment l'opportunité de changer ou d'accepter ou de ne pas accepter. Therefore, that's why we're kind of asking, we are asking council to grant the authority to the planning director in this case, so that we send the conditions to the county directly without waiting every month for planning committee for the end result, which is basically just recommendation from the staff to the county for the approval authority.
So it's to streamline the process.
Exactly.
If there's no objections.
Exactly.
C'est ça, puis la nation que je voyais dans le rapport, ça fait déjà 5 ans qu'ils font eux autres.
Exactement.
Okay, Councilor Associate?
Yeah, so I'm still not clear on this. So, like, my concern is like if it's going to skip the planning committee as well as the council. So I'm not really comfortable with that.
Yeah, well, to be clear, it would only skip if there was no objections, if there was no comments, if there was nothing from the public.
And how would we be able to object if it doesn't come to us, if we're not even, you know?
So, Madam Grande?
Yeah, so basically it says in the report that it's undisputed consent. So if we receive a consent application that would not meet the provincial policy, the county official plan or the township official plan, then we would have the responsibility to follow the process as it exists. So we would then send the application to the planning committee for them to make a decision. But if the application as submitted meets the provincial policy, it meets the official plan and the county official plan, then I would have the authority to just submit the conditions. So again, we're not approving the consent application. The county are the approval authority, and we're just like a comment agency that would send the comments to the county. So at the end of the day, the county are deciding if the consent is approved or not. We're just sending them our comments and conditions.
And then it would come back to council.
No, it doesn't come back to council at the moment either.
Yeah, currently it's the committee that approves, or that makes the recommendations to the unity counties. It doesn't even come to this table at the present time.
No. And to be fair, at the same time, we've been doing this for at least 6-7 years, and there's never been any comments from the Planning Advisory Committee on any consent. We rarely receive public comments as well, and if we do, then it's something that we consider in the conditions that are sent to the counties.
I guess my concern is that, you know, that if you're not aware, then you can't comment. You know, so that's the concern I have.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments on this one? Seeing none, we'll backtrack to a previous item. Item 8, presentations. Now I think I have the crowd I was looking for. Thank you very much, everyone, for being here this evening. I'll pull this so I can actually speak. I have some mixed emotions this evening. Chief Armstrong has been with the Russell Fire Department since July 2nd, 1992, before I graduated high school. The fire chief in Russell for the past 18 years, and Russell Township's full-time fire chief since April of this year, over 30 years. Not many people today in this world will achieve that level of commitment. I've had the privilege of being on this side of the table for the past 12 years, as Chief Armstrong provided his wisdom and advice to council while demonstrating his commitment to the people of this community. On a personal note, I wish to convey my thanks for the multitude of conversations we've had over the years. Regardless of what the subject matter was, you always helped shed light on the issue at hand, providing your thoughts clearly and candidly. For that you will forever have my utmost respect. Chief Armstrong, thank you for your devotion to Russell Township's residents. Joanne, thank you and your children for sharing him with us. Our community has been better because of this service to us all. Merci beaucoup, Chief. Chief, I'll invite you to come up. We have a little something for you.
Firefighter, attention!
Firefighters salute. Retirement certificate awarded to a dedicated leader, Chief Bruce Armstrong. The township wishes to recognize you on the occasion of your retirement. You are leaving us with a legacy of exceptional and selfless loyalty to our community. We wish you every success in your endeavors, and most of all, well-deserved retirement. On behalf of the council and staff of the Township of Russell, we thank you for your 31 years of loyal services. This is for you.
Is that a consolation?
Like I said, if you worship.
Might have a little bit of speech. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of council. I'm going to do my best to keep it as short as I can, not to drag this on. I want to thank you for this evening and for myself and my family that have been by my side the whole time. It's funny you bring up July 1992, because it was on Canada Day celebrations that I was approached about joining the Russell Fire Department. I never thought it would have been such an amazing and rewarding journey. But as I've told you, it's time to spend more precious time with my family. My family's been with me through the good times and not so good times, as all first responders go through from time to time. I've been blessed with 2 rewarding careers: ceremonial services with the Government of Canada, where I work closely with events surrounding our dear veterans and first responders, and again with the Russell Fire Department serving our community. Great memories and amazing friendships have been made. I want to thank the present council and the past council for all the support over the 19 years. It's been greatly appreciated. I want to thank my CEO, Dan. It's been a short time, but thank you for listening and providing valuable guidance and support to me. I want to thank the department heads and all their staff for lending a hand for a fire chief in need of assistance from time to time. And sometimes it was more often than other times. And my other helping hand is the clerk department. Joanna Marise, you were there for me for many things. Thank you very much. Debbie's not here tonight, but Debbie deserves a great thank you too for everything, for making sure that she's helped me with. To my team and my second family, a successful leader is only as successful because of the great supporting team, and that's what I had and have. I want to thank my officers for the many years of dedicated service they gave to me. I've been very fortunate, and I truly believe very fortunate. Lastly, to my family and my wife, Joanne. Thank you for the years of support you've given me. It takes a special, understanding person. Love you. Now I'm going to get it together. In closing, to the present members of council and the new council about to start, you have a very committed, dedicated, hardworking team of firefighters here. You have provided them and us with excellent equipment, a great fleet of vehicles, and 2 excellent fire halls. We are very proud and appreciative of that. With this full-time chief's position, it's the first block in the foundation for the fire service in the Russell Township and move into the future. It will be presented in, what's that report? The review that we're doing, and it'll be presented in our 2023 budget. Details that there's need for more full-time staffing to support this dedicated team as we move on to a very fast-paced community, and it's very fast-paced and growing. All I gotta say now is thank you again. Thank you for an amazing career. I have memories and friendships in my community to thank for that. Thank you.
Now, you're all welcome to stick around and watch a council meeting if you really want. I'll give you a few minutes if you decide just to skirt away.
I think I hear a fire paper.
You didn't program the pager to go off at a certain time? Just to be clear, I think we had Chief till the end of the year, so it's not his last council meeting.
Yes, you have me for a few moments.
Thank you very much, gentlemen, for being here. Ladies. Ladies, yes.
Thank you.
Pass the Kleenexes around. Thank you, everyone. We will continue. The next item, item D. Calendrier des réunions du budget, rapport FS 25-2022. Que le Conseil reçoive le rapport FS 25-2022 daté du 7 novembre 2022 et adopte 1. Le règlement proposé établissant un nouvel horaire régulier des réunions du Conseil qui auront lieu à chaque année pour l'adoption des budgets annuels. 2. Le calendrier des rencontres du budget 2023 tel que proposé à l'annexe A de ce rapport. Questions, commentaires, questions or comments? Councilor Alain?
Just one. Is it supposed to, are we supposed to see a calendar for every year or just for this, for the 2022 budget?
This is just, I believe, for the 2023 budget. Monsieur Godet?
Merci, Monsieur Maire. Bonsoir, Charles Conseil. So the appendix of the report is just for this 2023 budget, but in the bylaw there is this calendar for every year.
Oh, okay. In the bylaw.
Okay. Other questions or comments? Clearly seeing none. Anything to add from the administration? Pretty simple. We'll move on to the next item. Item E, winter parking restrictions pilot project report ISPW 17-2022. The council receives report ISPW 17-2022 dated November 7, 2022 and approves option 1 below to begin a winter parking pilot project for the winter of 2022-2023. Questions, comments, members of council? Conseiller Brisson.
Just, I know that it's been the third year, the 2 years that we're doing it now. Do we have any numbers of how much it was utilized? Because I'm really for it, but it was just to know how much the people knew about it and were using it. Do we have any statistics?
Thank you, Conseiller Brisson. I know, while this is an expansion to that program, but Mr. Fon and Madame Bordeaux, do we have numbers as far as how many people were utilizing the previous year's parking pilot in the two locations?
It varied, but it was not very, it wasn't used in great numbers.
But the option is there if residents needed to. And we
It varied. At times there were a few more vehicles parked overnight, but usually it was about 7.
D'autres questions, commentaires? Anything to add from the administration on this report? Mr. Fana?
Mr. Mayor and Council, I think it's safe to say that there's 2 elements to this pilot. One was to reinforce the option of using publicly available parking at night, but perhaps just as importantly, we received a couple of requests from residents to look at releasing some of the days. So we've released November and March from overnight bans in extremis, and we moved to a notification system. So we'll be communicating that tomorrow to notify residents when there will be a ban in the months of November and March. In the months of December, January, and February, the total overnight ban will remain in place. This will provide a bit more flexibility to residents to park on the street in those 2 months where there is obviously currently much less snow.
Conseiller Brisson?
And I was wondering, like, whenever we put a date, but as we see that this year it's really late, but if we have an early storm, a bit like they have in the west, do they change the date at that time, and how is it communicated?
Mr. Fana and Mr. Bourgon?
Monsieur Mayor, so let's say tomorrow morning there's a major storm coming in. Well, we would use a notification and advise people that like tomorrow night there'll be a ban of parking on the street.
So it'll be up to, obviously, to residents to keep an eye on social media accounts, the email accounts, the website.
Exactly, and we'll do the promotion of people signing up for our the quick communication or the
news, the
email that they'll receive the notification right away.
Perfect. D'autres questions, commentaires? Quelque chose d'autre à ajouter? No? Okay. We'll move on to the next item. Item F, subvention et contribution communautaire. Oui. Que le Conseil reçoive le rapport PR 15-2022 daté 17 novembre 2022 et adopte la recommandation du département pour les octrois municipaux de 2022 au groupe communautaire suivant. 1. Refuser un don ponctuel au Russell Rocks au montant de 1 000 $ pour le spectacle du centre communautaire qui aurait lieu le 26 novembre 2022. Madame la Greffière will be removing this item so that Councillor Sosi can vote on everything separately from this item. Questions, comments, members of council? Councillor Lorraine?
Do we know what the profits of this event are going to be used for?
I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Madame Dutal, it's for the Embrun Food Bank.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council, that's right.
Any other questions or comments? Quelque chose à ajouter, Madame Dutal?
No, just that to maybe bring back the 2 reports that we've already had during the year. We were in the same kind of situation, so where there's a net profit, council did not recommend to allow more cash money just to increase the net profit. The group is already anticipating a net profit, and that is not counting revenues from the bar that were not identified in their budget, because they're taking the hall. We've already approved the hall with the bar service, so the municipality will not be making any bar revenues from that thing. The bar revenues have been given to this group.
Thank you very much. Yeah, based on the projected budget they submitted, they're already looking at a close to $4,000 profit without this $1,000 contribution, not including, as you mentioned.
Do we have any money in the community grants budget that already goes to the food bank?
I believe, correct me, not from the community grants, but a few years ago, we actually helped subsidize the rent.
Yeah, we paid the rent.
Monsieur Godin, do you remember
Do
what
we still do any?
Yeah, I think I have in my mind $600 a month.
That's Mr. Mayor. So yes, we do subsidize the rent. I can double check the exact amount. I do think it's in that ballpark.
500 or 600 a month. Okay. Any other questions? No. Anything else to put ajouter?
No, thank you.
Okay, perfect. We'll move on to the next item. Item G, Mobile Canteen Pilot Project Update Report PR 16-2022. The council received report PR 16-2022 dated November 7, 2022, and 1. Approved the renewal of a 2-year lease for the mobile canteen Pearson Street Burger owned by Mr. Chris Pearson on a yearly basis at the location of the Yahoo Park in Embrun. Questions, comments, members of council? Anything to add, Madame Guitar? If we're suggesting a continuation, obviously it was a success.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Yes, it was a success. There were a lot of positive mentions, like I did put in my report. So we've also approved that the trailer would stay there for the winter for a minimal amount of money. So I think, Mr. Pearson was happy with the recommendations, so we would gladly renew the lease for another 2 years if council accepts the recommendation.
Thank you very much. Conseiller Larrey?
Yeah, I just want to make sure, just from the terminology, it says we're going to approve the renewal of a 2-year lease on an annual basis.
Madame Guitar?
Thank you, members of council. No, our thoughts were to approve for 2 years. We would not be coming back to council
So we
for
may
another
need
2
to
years.
amend that resolution.
Approve the renewal of a 2-year lease for the mobile canteen Pearson Street Burger owned by Mr. Chris Pearson on a yearly basis at the location of the Yahoo Park in Embrun.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. So what I meant by this, it's because when we started the pilot project, it was only from May to April or May until the end of October. Now it's going to be an annual lease for the whole year. So there's going to be a seasonal period for the summer and then another seasonal for the winter. So now it's a lease for annually.
So perhaps what we can do is we
The
can
renewal of an annual
basis.
A 2-year annual lease or something.
Yeah, we could change the yearly basis to an annual basis.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we do have clarification. That makes sense because it was previously a 6-month lease with nothing indicated for the winter time. Conseiller Brisson?
Y a-t-il des dates de déterminer quand ils doivent permettre, quand ils doivent ouvrir, ou ça dépend de la température?
Madame Guitar?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. It is mentioned in the report that it's
November 1st to March 31st. Because, I'm just looking at
it's April 1st. Of course, it's always weather depending. And October 31st is the latest date. So I know this year, maybe we could have extended, but at one point for us, the operations, we need to close the water and do all that stuff. So October 31st is the last day.
And we also have an agreement with the hot potato for the
That's right.
in the arena.
That's right. And Mr. Carpentier was nice enough to, agree that there may be an overlap of 2 or 3 weeks. So we don't want to,
Question. Very good. Questions, on va enlever celle-là aussi, juste pour clarifier la recommandation. Okay, any other questions or comments? Anything else, Tom? No? Next item H, politique de service à la clientèle et des plaintes, rapport CAO 14-2022. Que le Conseil reçoive le rapport CAO 14-2022 daté du 7 novembre 2022 et que le Conseil approuve la révision de la politique de service à la clientèle et que le Conseil approuve le règlement proposé et abroge l'ancien règlement 53-2013. Questions, comments, members of council? Councilor Sosa.
So this is the policy we have the public responded to in 48 hours?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I'm totally in favor of this and support this, but I also just want to add, I think we should also have a policy on responding to council members in a timely manner as well. So I'd like to see possibly that in the future, within 48 hours at least.
Mr. Farmer?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. That would be a separate matter in terms of council staff list, but I take note of it. Thank you for raising it. I also want to mention that there's 2 elements to this we were trying to do. One was to simplify the process to provide both feedback and formal complaints from residents. The older policy was a little bit cumbersome in my opinion, so we've shortened it considerably But we've also added a formal form on the back of it that people can access online on the website to provide. And then the time of this we wanted to underline as well.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments on this one? Councilor Eadie?
No, I'm good.
Okay. If nothing else, we'll move on to the next item. Item 12, reports from investigator and the ombudsman. We have oh, sorry. Bill 23 update, the More Homes Built Faster Act 2022, verbal report FS 2022. Mr. Fondin, Mr. Godin, this will be an interesting one.
Yes, merci, Mr. Mayor. So yes, council members and members of the public may have heard or read about new legislation being pushed by the province, Bill 23, which is the More Homes Built Faster Act. We did want to mention to council today that the finance department and the planning department are working together to really analyze and to understand all the changes. There are some significant implications for the municipality, and we'll be preparing a report to council to bring it all to you in a clear report to be able to answer all your questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Godin. For those who maybe not have followed it, it has the potential to change the landscape of our villages considerably. It will definitely have an impact on our residential areas, our cores. Basically, it's giving the green light to residential properties where you could have a whole subdivision of single-family homes, and everybody could decide to turn their homes into triplexes, and there's not much the municipality can do about it. So I'm looking forward to see what the final details will be once approved, because we know that they're moving fast on this one. But I think that we should give direction to the administration to pass along their feedback to AMO and those kind of organizations that are looking for feedback, because it will forever impact the landscape of our community. So, Councillor Associate.
Yeah, and I know also Substation issued a press release on this with their concerns about ecological areas as well, and wetlands and things like that. So we might want to include that in the report as well. Thank you.
And it's not, from my understanding, again, because I've read through it as well over the weekend when I had some extra time. And it's not just the land, but it's also development charges, building permits, and stuff like that. So there are a lot of downward flowing items that, without additional support coming from the province to offset, could have very significant impacts to our finances as well, not just the landscape of our villages.
Mr. Godin?
Merci, Mr. Mayor. So if council wishes, we can still list a bit of a high level implication without going into the numbers. We have to provide some interpretation. So I'll start just with on the DC side, the development charges side, for the financial side. So there will be some DC exemptions for affordable and attainable housing. There are certain types of expenses that are no longer eligible to be funded from development charges. There's going to be a 5-year phase-in for DC rate increases. So we did receive the consultant's interpretation that won't be applicable until our next DC study, since we passed one back in 2021. So that might be more of an implication in 5 years. Wait, excuse me. So on other notes on the financial side, some DC rates will have to be reduced for rental housing as well, and our interest rate policy is going to have to be revised because they did put a cap on interest that we charge for DC deferrals and the DC freeze rates. So those are just some of the financial implications. I don't know if Madam Fowler would like to add for the planning side.
Thank you, Madam Fowler.
Yeah, and just to mention on the planning side, like it's going to change completely the way of the processes for land use planning. So there's a lot of major changes as for parkland, for example. As you know, right now we work with the recreation department to define where in the subdivision the 5% of park would be required. Now the obligation will be, the landowner will be deciding where the park is going to be provided. And if the municipality don't approve, then we have to go to the tribunal and make an appeal. So we don't decide anymore where parkland will be required. It's the landowner. If we're not satisfied, then the municipality will have to appeal to the board. There's a lot of changes on process, as just mentioned, so no one other than the applicant, the municipality, public bodies, and minister will be allowed to appeal municipal decision to the tribunal. So that's all for planning application. So there's no appeal anymore.
From the public side of things.
For the public side effect, so that applies to all planning decision, including consent and minor variances. For the right of zoning and permit, the third unit, as you just mentioned, so now everywhere in the municipality, a third unit will be permitted without a zoning amendment, and they will be exempt from DCs. Right now, the second unit is exempt from DC, but as mentioned by Mr. Gabay, the third unit will be exempt. There's no public meeting anymore required for all plan of subdivisions. So as you know, right now, for new plan of subdivision, we were required under the Planning Act to proceed with a public process. So now the public process is completely removed out of the public for the zoning, for the subdivisions. For site plan control, so when we have right now 3 residential units and more, all new commercial, institutional, we're required to have a site plan process. Now this site plan process will be required only for 10 units and more. So everything below 10, no site plan will be required. And architectural detail and landscaping design are removed from all the scope of required work. So all our design guidelines that we have in our official plan right now with compatibility criteria will have to be removed because we have no right to comments on the architectural elevation of any buildings. Like I mentioned, the tribunal will have increased power to order costs against the third party who lose a hearing in tribunal. So they'll have more power to request monies that were spent when you lose your case, and giving increased power to dismiss appeal due on delays, for example. So if we don't meet the delays, then they have increased power for the tribunal. So there's, like I mentioned, this will have to. We'll have to change our parkland bylaws, site plan bylaws, and zoning, obviously, to reflect those changes. But when the application, the assermentation will be done for this bill, it supersedes all of our bylaws. So even if the bylaws are not changed to reflect the Bill 23, then the Bill 23 will take effect. Yeah. I also forgot, as Madame Saucy mentioned, the Conservation Authority. So right now, as you know, we use the South Nation Conservation to review our stormwater management report and sediment erosion control plans. Right now, they'll be removed out of the process, and they'll be limited to review everything as flood hazard and floodplain. So that will be their limited authority to comment on new and proposed development.
Mr. Fawnin.
Mr. Mayor and Council, I think it's fair to simply to back up a little bit to provide the strategic context to this provincial public policy. And this was to increase and enhance intensification of urban centers and to reduce administration and time in the production process. So as we are providing our comments through our own chain and also perhaps through the resolution, it's just important to acknowledge that provincial policy is quite firm on this. So I don't know if we would have a whole lot of sympathy going forward with too many changes, but we are working with consultants right now to look if we can collectively go and make some modifications to at least ensure that we're ensuring a level of rigor in the planning process.
So essentially, read between the lines, we want more houses and we don't care what it does to your community. We'll say Brisson.
That's what I was thinking. It was just almost like the Far West. There's no more control and all the planning. Because I was already finding that sometimes it was going a bit too much just by builders, that they were thinking about just themselves instead of seeing the big picture, whether it's bicycle path, plans for long term that goes different, through different developer. Now it's go to hell with those plans. We build as you want, and I think it's really, and as we're saying, it's a lot of revenue, but also those revenue were with some concern that were applied, and we all know that some have conscience, but some are just there for money. So the more stuff that they can put on, so now I've heard a little bit about it, but I didn't thought it was that bad.
Yeah, there's actually one that comes to mind that just will aggravate the situation is right now we have parking standards in regards to how many parking spots you need to have available on your property. So if you're adding a second or a third unit, you need to have the parking available. With this bylaw, or with this new law, we cannot turn down a project because they don't have enough parking. So our streets are going to get potentially flooded with excess, cars and trucks on the street. So we might have to look at other avenues to try and rectify that situation. We've already seen it on one or two streets where it was creating an issue. So there's going to be a lot of tough decisions moving forward, and unfortunately, being as per the Constitution, municipalities are creatures of the province, and we deal with the rules they give us. We'll have to figure out ways of, perhaps playing within those rules and finding loopholes that benefit us, and perhaps before they close those loopholes. So, look forward to the report coming in the future on this subject. I think this is something that residents will need to be aware of. As much as we like to say that we're planners and we're doing things for the future, the province is essentially taking us out at the knees on this one on a lot of files. So, thank you very much for the heads up, and although artist Eadie can't get that up all once it's finally it's approved by the province and we get the gist of it. With that, item 12, reports from investigator of the Ombudsman, we have none. Item 13, notice of motions, we have none. Item 14, question period on the meeting of the day. So if anyone has questions on agenda items, I invite you to come up to the lectern and state your name and address for the record and pose your question.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor. It's me again, Charles Armstrong, 85 Castleville. I got a few questions on item 11C, the delegation of powers and duties. How many disputed and undisputed consent applications have there been, say, in the last year, or how many, and how long do they take in the planning committee?
Thank you very much. Madame Penable, I think you mentioned earlier there hasn't really been any.
Through Mr. Mayor, there's never been a disputed severance application, because usually when it doesn't meet the PPS or the official plan, the application is not submitted to the township for review. The county don't even receive the application when usually they don't recommend the application. So there's never been disputed files for a severance application.
Okay. The next one is 11G, the mobile canteen pilot project. Is there any provision or any vision in the future for having potential bids for such services in our park?
Thank you very much. I don't think there's any, nobody else has shown any interest at this point in time. But I believe that if anybody else did show interest and communicate with the township, I mean, that's one park. We have several parks. Madame Guiton?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of council. One thing, we need water and electricity, which we do not have in most of our parks, unfortunately. So this park, the fortunate part was that we had that close proximity. And yes, there was never any request. This was really the first time, so that's why it was called a pilot project, and it did work. So,
yeah.
So for now, I think
if there ever is interest, we can look at that.
Okay. And the last one is on 11I, and it's again the Bill 23. I quickly read through that bill, and one of the things that came out to me was the the statement, the minister may make regulation. And I notice the devil is always in the detail about such things. Does anybody have any idea what sort of regulation we may see coming out of this?
Not to my knowledge, Mr. Fawnin, Mr. Godet. We've had the same information that's been publicly put out there. We don't have any additional information.
The only reason, is the, I'll tell you why that came out to me was the development charges issue, or the lack thereof. But I was just wondering if the province was looking at compensating municipalities, for example, in similar to the payments in lieu of taxes scheme or whatever, that would ease the burden on municipalities of this type of thing.
No, that's actually part of the comments received from the Association of Municipalities of Ontario. Actually commented to that historically the concept of growth pays for growth seems to be changing with this. So they're sharing their comments, they're collecting comments, sharing those with the province. Hopefully it makes a difference, but again, as you mentioned, until the details come out, we're not sure what's going to happen.
Okay. So there is potential to influence some of these details?
The comments will be sent, whether it'll make a difference or not, at the speed that they're going through right now trying to pass this bill. Who knows? Maybe if you get 444 municipalities that start picketing outside, it'll make a difference, just like it backed up today, but I'm not sure where it's going to go.
Yeah. Then again, Toronto objected when they cut the number of councillors.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
Eric Greer, Point Embrun, and it's for agenda item 11I. The basic question is mainly focused on the idea that when you go up to the tribunal, the stakes are higher now because if you lose, you have to pay more. That also means that if you win, you're setting a precedence. And I can understand how these changes can start to remove funds from the township. But if there is it possible to make a consolidated financial argument for the plans that the township has for paths, for walkability, for accessibility, that revenue for the township would actually decrease if it was just the Wild West and developers just could do what they want for more homes faster and better, but that it actually would cost the township more. And would that be enough of a reason for the tribunal to take place and potentially start setting that precedence?
So if I understand properly, in regards to the tribunal itself, that'll be on a case-per-case basis. In regards to the legislation itself, I think all those arguments are coming from different avenues right now. Those comments are being given to the province. Will it have an impact? I don't know. Because it won't be the tribunal that decides the legislation. It will be the government that will decide the legislation. Wish I had a better answer for you.
That's right. Thank you.
Did you forget a gift? I wasn't sure about this big thing.
It's not on the agenda.
It's a question. Harry Baker, 2 Forest Road. I have a question on item 18 that hasn't been discussed. So I don't know if this has ever happened before. But
No, we haven't had that discussion yet. So I won't be able to give you any answers.
So I can ask the question and you don't have to answer. Is that the
Sure, ask the question and hopefully we can address it during that discussion.
All right. So it's got to do with 106 Craig Street.
Okay.
And what has happened is the lot has just been cleared last week. And the neighbors didn't know that it was going to be cleared. Weren't brought up to a speed as to what the plans were that had changed since 2013. But here's my question. The question is, who approves the removal of trees on a site when it's on township property?
Okay. Thank you. Noted. We'll have that discussion.
Okay. And then the other question is, I have 2 questions, if I may. The second question is the person that is making that decision or giving the permission, do they know what a butternut tree is?
Thank you very much.
And do they know if it's a protected species?
We've taken note. Thank you very much. With that, I see no further questions. We'll move on to item 15, resolutions. Motion that council approve all recommendations listed on the agenda under item 11, reports from departments and council committees. So I need a mover and a seconder to put that on the floor. So moved by Conseiller Lain, seconded by Conseiller Brisson. And then I believe we're removing two items. Item F, item F and item G. So a mover and a seconder to remove item F.
Adding C to
Remove C as well? Yeah. So remove C, F, and G. Need a mover and a seconder for that. Moved by Conseiller Lain, seconded by Conseiller Brisson. All in favor of removing C, F, and G? Anybody opposed? Carried. So let's vote on everything except C, F, and G. Call for the vote. All those in favor? All those opposed? Carried. So now we will go to item C, the delegation of powers and duties, report PD 75-2022. Need a mover and a seconder to put it on the floor, please. Moved by Conseiller Brisson, seconded by Conseiller Lain. Questions, comments? And then I'll call for the vote. All those in favor? All those opposed? Carried. Item F, community grants and contributions, report 15-2022. Need a mover and a seconder. Not much choice. Moved by Councillor Brisson, seconded by Conseiller Lain. Questions or comments? Hearing none. Call for the vote. All those in favor? All those opposed? Carried. Item G, mobile canteen pilot project update, report PR 16-2022. Need a mover and a seconder to put on the floor. Moved by Councillor Saucier, seconded by Conseiller Brisson. I believe we wanted to make an amendment on this one. Did somebody want to recommend an amendment to change the yearly basis to an annual basis? Moved by Conseiller Lain, seconded by Councillor Saucier. Those in favor of making that word change from yearly to annual? Anyone opposed? Okay, so we'll change that. So now we'll approve as amended. Question, commentaire?
Yeah, it was just with the comment that it might be something to consider, that he doesn't have exclusivity because he was the first one to ask. But if there's some other request, that it could be open to be considered to some other that for the question.
Madame Bordeaux.
I just want to point out that there are limits to
Yeah.
the number of canteens in
Yes. Right. So if somebody, I think this was more in regards that if we had multiple people interested in this location, then it would go to an RFP process or a bidding process to see essentially who would bid the most to get that spot. But I understand the limit we have for the number of canteens in the township. Councillor Latte?
And because this will come up for review every 2 years, if there is somebody that was looking at that spot, they could make that request when that renewal lease comes up, and then we can look at whether or not it makes sense. And I think that process only comes into play because it's on our land.
Yeah.
Right? So, but I don't disagree with that, and if there is somebody else that decides they want the spot, then they wait the 2 years till the lease is up, and make a decision at that point.
Yeah.
Or go to an RFP.
Exactly. And staff obviously will keep track if there's interest in that, and we'll be able to see moving forward. Okay. D'autres questions, commentaires? Hearing, seeing none. All those in favor? All those opposed? Carried. Item G is carried. Next item, item 16, bylaws. Motion that council approve bylaws 2022-116 to 2022-120 inclusively for first, second, and third reading as listed on the agenda. 116 being a zoning bylaw amendment for Eadie Road in Russell. 117 being a bylaw authorized the mayor and the clerk to execute and affix corporate seal concerning Cash-in-Lieu parking agreement between Land Table Restaurant and Corporation Township of Russell. 2022-118 being a bylaw to adopt the delegation powers relating to undisputed consent applications for committee of adjustment. We will remove that once we put on the floor. 2022-119 for the yearly budgets, and 2022-120 for adoption of client services and complaint policy. So I need a mover and a seconder to put all these on the floor. Moved by Councillor Brisson, seconded by Councillor Lorraine. So, Councillor Saucier, did you want to remove item 118?
Yes, please.
Okay. So moved by Councillor Saucier to remove 118. Do we have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Lorraine. So all those in favor of removing 118? 118 is now removed, so we'll vote on everything except 118.
Mr. Mayor?
Oui.
Just want to add for one of the bylaws in the package, 120, we added a paragraph under the resolve just to say that it was clear that it was to approve the policy and the form for the complaints policy. It was noted in the whereas and everything, but it was just like missing. It was only saying it was repealing, but it will be to approve the policy as attached and the complaint form. So just so you know.
Perfect. Everybody's okay with that? Okay. So vote on everything except 2022-118. All those in favor? All those opposed? Carried. Thank you very much. So now we will vote on 2022-118 separately. Need a mover and a seconder, please, to put on the floor. Moved by Councillor Brisson, seconded by Councillor Lorraine. Questions, comments? All those in favor? All those opposed? Carried. Thank you very much. Item 17, new business reports, we have none. Item 18, 18A, Councillor Saucier, Marionville.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As you're aware, I sat on the Marionville Citizens Committee. On October 19th, we had the church historical plaque unveiling, which was a great event. And but during that evening, I just wanted to again bring to the attention that the breaker in the hall goes off if 2 items are plugged in. So they weren't able to serve coffee. And also the floor was heaving as though something's coming through the floor. So I just want to make sure that the Marionville Citizens Committee isn't forgotten as I am about to depart. So yeah, so just that it's documented that those are 2 issues.
Okay, thank you very much, Madame Nicole. I think we had spoken about the floor issue, and staff were looking into that. We can look into to the breaker issue.
I was not aware of the breaker issue in the kitchen, so
We'll have a look at that. Perfect, thank you very much.
Yeah, and Monsieur Marion had sent me an email, so he just wanted to address. And I think we can copy somebody on that.
18B, speed on Craig Street.
Yeah, that was just a thing that residents, I received a number of calls and letters, and somebody came to my home to talk about the speed, and then you've probably seen all the signs. So they're quite aware and concerned that the, especially in the school zone, that it's, not going to be 40 just for the school period, that they'd like to see the speed addressed further along. And then again, as this area gets more developed, there'll be a lot more traffic. And so I just think that's something that we'll have to keep our radar on, is the speed that's going on. I have seen some police presence out there and making sure the traffic is slowing down. Especially, I have done the crosswalk guard job there, and I know how scary it is.
Mr. Fun and Mr. Bourgon, there are plans for works to help potentially address some of those issues next year, correct?
Yeah, exactly, Mr. Mayor. So part of the storm sewer construction on Craig Street, we will be implementing a few traffic calming device through that corridor.
Okay.
So such as like the sidewalk along the park. So where there's like the disconnect of sidewalk right now, so there'll be one installed. Proper pedestrian crossing, so with the posts and the lights, and a few bump outs throughout that segment as well.
Okay, perfect. Councilor Associate?
And that construction of sidewalk, that won't affect the gardens and that in that park?
No, the sidewalk will be in the roadway as is right now. Instead of the paved shoulder, it will be a sidewalk.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions regarding that? And item C, 106 Craig Street.
All right, oh, yes, that's right. I also have a couple of announcements after, but that's further on. Yeah, so on October 22nd, we planted 100 trees in Tree Conservation Area. And then the following week, on November 1st, approximately 200 trees were cut down on Forest Road, a mix of pine, maple, and the endangered species of butternut. There was approximately 20 butternut identified there. And so under the Endangered Species Act of 2008, the MNR is supposed to be contacted even if a tree is dead or diseased or possibly dying. And I think they should have at least been transplanted out of there, possibly into the conservation area. And I know there would have been a lot of volunteers willing to do that. The other thing that I just wanted to bring up was that there was an objection to the proposed zoning change due to the drainage issues, and that the water is particularly high in the spring, up to 40 inches on that side. So that's a concern for the resident to the north, and also about his septic system and whether that will cause flooding with all the trees gone. And then the third story building also affects their privacy. And according to SNC, it was agreed that trees would be left on the perimeter and on the shared property line, because now there'll be balconies and people will be just peering into their yard. The other thing that was to be addressed was they stated that just a few trees had to be removed, when in fact it was a clear cut. So that was a concern. And then the other concern I had was the AC has been working on an updated tree bylaw, and we presently have a tree bylaw, canopy bylaw, which is 2019-031. So in the counties under section 5.5.6, that we protect the tree canopy and vegetation of the Township of Russell. And it also states that we will recognize the importance of protecting adequate forest cover, and that our township is at, Russell is at 12%, and a minimum of 30% is the standard. So this is in the tree bylaw from the 2019-031. Also, is there any plan for ecological compensation for the loss of so many trees by the developer? That was not one of my main questions, because this is considered a natural heritage.
So we have lots to hear, so let's deal with one at a time.
Okay,
and we'll
so
try
is
to
there a compensation plan for the township?
Mr. Fawnin, Mr. McDonald? Currently, we don't have any bylaw for compensation.
No, there's no bylaw for that, but I know the owner will be or is already planting more trees on some other properties.
Okay, and then, so going back to my other question, so why or how were they given permission to remove endangered species and even trees that are on our township land?
So in regards to the trees that were on municipal property, Mr. Boudreaux?
Yeah, so I gave the authority the approval to remove 2 trees where the future entrance will be located.
Okay.
But they removed 200.
So on municipal property?
On municipal property.
There was 2 trees removed.
That we discussed, and we on a site meeting, there was 2 tree flags to be removed.
On
municipal property.
Everything else was on private property.
Exactly.
And then the butternut?
The 2 trees that were flagged were not butternuts.
No, I realize that, but how did they get permission to remove an endangered species, which is protected?
Right, but that would not be through the township.
That would be through the MNR, and of what my understanding, MNR was already notified.
By us? Have we notified them?
We were already notified.
Yeah. Based on comments I saw online, a lot of people reached out to MNR. So,
okay.
And Mr. Fawnin, did you want to have a comment? No. Okay.
And then I also wanted clarification on the proposed entrance, whether it's going to be on Forest Road, because they're talking about underground parking. And my concern is having traffic going in and out right before the stop sign. So And the copy of the plan that I got had the entrance not correct, so I was just curious if that had changed.
Madame Tremblay, if I remember well, county doesn't allow entrances on county roads.
So just to reiterate the process, the application for the full application for complete site plan based on the zoning amendment that was done back in 2013. The application was submitted last week. So we received full copy of the site plan, landscaping plans, stormwater servicing, grading. All of those plans were circulated today to the administration for review, as well as South Nation. So those comments, just for the entrance, will be part of the site plan review that staff will perform. Before we issue building permits, a site plan agreement needs to be submitted and signed and registered on property. On the site plan, for one of the comments that you were mentioning, it does mention existing trees along the property line to remain. Existing trees that are in the location of the building are not close to and shall be removed. So the ones that were discussed with the owner to be kept are shown on the site plan that was provided to be remaining on the property along the property line to maintain that buffer in between the existing property and the other ones. And the entrance, as you mentioned, Mr. Mayor, the county doesn't allow new entrances when it's a corner lot to be on Craig Street. So that's a policy from the county, and they are part of the circulation as well as site plan because Craig is a county road. However, the entrance is on force because of that bylaw.
And that was what South Nation had told me, that the trees were supposed to be kept to buffer the neighbor, but that didn't happen. They all came down. So so now they're open right to their yard.
Yeah, so I don't understand why South Nation would comment on site plan that was not even circulated. So South Nation will comment on the site plan that was circulated. They don't do negotiation with neighbors, and they don't comments on privacy from existing owner to propose site plan. That's the township's responsibility.
Yeah.
So the agreement, just to answer the first question about the agreement that was done, so there was an appeal, and the appeal was
Retracted?
No, it was retracted by the owner that made that, by the neighbor that made the appeal under an agreement with the builder, and they've met with the applicant before they submitted the site plan to go over the changes under the appeal that was done back in 2013 before they submitted the new site plan, just to make sure to go over the changes that were proposed under the agreement that the builder and the neighbor had between the two. So the township was not involved in any agreement. I double checked with our lawyer that was involved back then in the appeal, and we have the responsibility now to review the site plan as per the zoning that is in place at the moment.
I think they were involved because of the drainage issue, and there was a ravine there, so it was part of that, because they did say that the developer had agreed to leave a buffer of trees. So that's probably why they were involved. And then the other question I had was, because so many years had lapsed, did they not have to reapply? Like, I thought it was 5 years that, and then also that there wasn't signage, or the neighbors weren't notified within 150 feet.
Mr. Fong, Madame Tremblay.
So the zoning amendment doesn't lapse, so it's good forever. Once it's changed, the zoning is good forever. Site plan doesn't require public notice. There's going to be a sign. The township does impose a sign to be installed, but that's just because we want the owners and the surrounding property owner to know what's being proposed. Once the sign will be installed, which was ordered today, it will be installed sometime next week, and then it has a link to our website to provide the site plan that is being proposed, and people are they could submit their comments as part of the public process, but there's no actual notification to property owner for site plan application.
I think Councillor Lorraine, you had a question or comment?
Yeah, I just want to say, so I have the site plan up, the proposed site plan up in front of me, and there are, if I'm looking at the landscape list, 11 blue spruce trees that are going to be planted along the backside between the owner and the existing owner and the property, and 7 maple trees along the west side of the property
The doctor's office.
Yeah.
And then what size is it?
2 meters high each,
So 6 feet roughly.
so 6 feet-ish. That are being, I think that's 7, could be 9 maple trees, I'm not sure. Looks like 7. And then there's some juniper shrubs and some cedar cone that'll be placed in and around the site plan, as it is proposed right now.
And then I guess what was Mr. Baker's question? Like, did I answer his question or ask his question?
It was looking for the authority, who gave the authority to cut the trees? And in regards to butternut, again, that's a ministry item, that's not a township responsibility, that falls under the ministry.
Who gave the order?
We gave the order on the 2 trees in regards, that was on township property.
The owner of the property told me that he was told he could clear all the trees off the property that he wanted. It never said the letter didn't just say 2, it said all of them.
Well, as Mr. Goodell stated, he had an on-site visit, and we approved for our 2 trees that were on municipal property. Again, it's on private property, so what the owner did and who discussions he had.
On your property, sir. On your property.
On
I
our
was only
property.
asking about your property.
Yeah, the 2 trees were authorized by Mr. Goodell.
I think that was it. Sorry to take up so much time, but it's my last meeting, so.
I have a question in regards to this. We were talking about Bill 23 earlier. Bill 23, I heard you mention that the people for the site plan will be able to give comments and all that kind of stuff. But with Bill 23, that's essentially
Bill 23 doesn't affect
the
site plan right now.
Not at that size project.
No, but even now nobody has the right to appeal except the applicant for site plan.
Okay.
Even before Bill 23, whatever's in effect right now for site plan process, the only person that could appeal is the applicant if he's not satisfied with the condition that the township is imposing. So nobody, neighbors or anything else has the right to appeal site plan.
And again, this is provincial legislation. That pulls this isn't a township thing, this is provincial legislation.
That's provincial, yeah, that's under the Planning Act.
And can we, at this stage, have input on the architectural bill of what's being built?
Yeah, through use member, yeah, because it was submitted prior to the approval of Bill 23, yes, we still have the right to comment on elevations based on our official plan design guidelines.
Yeah.
All right, I think that was it.
Perfect.
I think I got that.
Okay. With that, public consultations and hearings. Item 20, announcements. I have announcements, as you guys probably figured. Announcements?
Yeah.
You want to start? Go ahead.
Yeah, I just had wanted to mention about the Pumpkin Fest and what a success it was, and I congratulate Eric and Brittany on the event. And there was around 540 participants, and when I was there around 1 o'clock, they were at 4:30. So it was just unbelievable how many people and how busy they were. And I think they'll need more help next year by the looks of things. But congratulations on a great event. And the other one, I just, of course, have to put a plug in for Russell Rocks on November 26th at the Embrun Community Center. And it's at 7 p.m. and there will be 4 live bands. And the proceeds go to the Christmas baskets for the Embrun Food Bank. So be there or be square.
Heard that one. Any announcements, other members of council? If not, I do have announcements, and I will change to the electorate again. I think you guys know who I'm addressing myself to. Councillors Brisson and Saucier have sat by my side at this table for the last 8 years. It goes by fast, eh? I think we were all a little less gray back then. While we have not always agreed, I would like to thank them for the professionalism they demonstrated during all that time. Pour être juste, nous avons eu des moments où les tensions étaient élevées et nous nous sommes retrouvés non seulement du côté opposé d'un problème, mais aussi au côté opposé des écrans, qui était un premier pour le conseil municipal du canton de Russell. Et pendant ces périodes, j'ai toujours eu confiance en vos capacités à être respectueux, compatissants et dévoués aux gens de notre municipalité. I'd also like to thank their spouses, Julie and Mike, and their families for sharing them with us. While you did not participate in council meetings, I am sure you lent a compassionate ear on many occasions, providing your own counsel along the way. With great pleasure, I present you both with a token of council, staff, and our residents' appreciation. May your post-council life be restful, joyful, and blessed. I'll invite you to come down here. That one will be Cindy, this one will be Andre. So, I'll invite you to take the covers off. Sorry if I'm hiding you guys. Oh, don't drop it. Don't drop it.
Is mine a picture of trees?
Not quite, but it's close. So both of these photos are signed by the photographer. The sunflowers for Conseil Associé was by Désiré Perra, and the wheat field for Conseiller Brisson is by Rhonda Bradley. They were both part of the photo 2022 contest.
Cool idea.
Yeah. So on the plaques, it says, presented to Councillor André Brisson and Conseiller Associé by His Worship Pierre Leroux on behalf of all residents in the Township of Russell, 2014 to 2018 and 2018 to 2022. Thank you so much, guys. Mike, sorry, but Cindy's going to get this one. And this one is for you. Because obviously we know that you guys have part to play.
Staff and our new CEO, because you already showed support to me, and we've only had a short time together. But so there's many people that made this journey easier and helped me along the way. Including yourself, Mr. Mayor, and
on occasion.
On occasion, sometimes you gave me grief, but I will be out there. And like my husband said when I started, he said, vote for Cindy so I say keep her busy. So I'm out of his hair. But so I'm still going to be involved with my community. I was in this audience for 4 mayors, and I'll continue to do that because I care about this community. That's why I ran. That's why I was here. And I'll continue to fight the good fight and keep an eye on our community as a whole. So thank you.
vais essayer de pas brailler parce que je suis I'm easy to cry a bit like Chief Armstrong. So it's really nice not to be kicked out of council. That was the best decision. We're even recognized for our work instead of being kicked out and everything. So, puis je peux pas dire c'est juste des bons mots avec tout le staff aussi. Je sais, je me suis impliqué avec vous autres, vous êtes impliqués avec moi. On faisait de grandes familles. Puis, un gros merci. Parce que, tu sais, il y a des jours où c'était pas drôle, que tu revenais frustré, mais tu sais, il y avait des commentaires, tout ça. Puis j'ai vraiment aimé ma job. Puis je le recommande à tout le monde. Bonne chance, Marc. Puis j'espère que tu vas être pour plus qu'un terme aussi, parce que je crois que c'était important, comme notre deuxième terme a vraiment été important, parce que le premier, ça a été pour savoir un peu comment que ça marchait, puis le deuxième, pour s'impliquer plus. Il faut dire que sur mes 8 ans, j'ai manqué 2 réunions de conseil seulement, puis ça a été que j'ai suivi à pareil, parce qu'il y en avait une, j'étais à Toronto avec mes filles, voyage, mais je suivais, puis j'avais quelqu'un que je texté, puis l'autre c'était le COVID, mais c'est des seuls meetings, parce que c'est la raison que je veux prendre du temps avec ma famille pour voyager. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you. We'll go back and we'll finish this up.
I just want to also congratulate Cindy and Andre for their commitment to this community. 8 years is an amazing contribution to the residents of our community, to council, and to staff. So it's been a pleasure working with you guys for that full 8 years. And I wish you all great success with your families now that you're no longer on council with us. But I'm sure we'll see you out in the community or in the seats out there many times. And just know that my door is always open, and my email and phone, you have it. So don't hesitate to reach out.
You'll hear from me.
With that, item 21, closed session, we have none this evening. Confirming bylaw. That bylaw 2022-121 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the council of the corporation or township of Russell at its regular council meeting held on November 7, 2022. Be ready first, second, and third time and passed. Meaning mover and a seconder, moved by Conseiller Brisson, seconded by Conseiller Saucier. All those in favor? All those opposed? Carried. The next regular public meeting of council will be held on November 21st, 2022 at 5:30 p.m. for those interested. That will be the swearing-in ceremony. And we are adjourned at 7:33 p.m. Thank you very much, everyone. Bonne soirée.